In this session, we welcome experts with viewpoints from aerospace and government to zero-emission hardware and 3D printing. The panelists will explore key tools required to elevate and accelerate the creation of cutting-edge technologies and what to watch out for in 2022. In conversation with CEO Starbust Accelerator, Francois Chopard, please welcome Val Miftakhov, founder and CEO of ZeroAvia, Kelly Halfin, Head of Business Intelligence of Launcher, and Minister of Science, Technology, and Higher Education, Manuel Heitor.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's the last day, the last afternoon, but we have a great audience, and we're going to talk about an amazing topic, which is aviation, space. You know, what are the trends coming up next year, but of course in the next 5 years. With us, we have Manuel, your Ministry of Science and Technology of Portugal, that will be talking about the Portugal ecosystem, but also European challenge. Kelly from launchers and developing a rocket, and Val talking about zero-emission type of aircraft. But you know, as we start, maybe Kelly, can you say, tell us a few words on the trend that you're seeing in the space industry more globally?
Yes. So yes, I'm with launchers. So basically, we build rockets. And so we offer access to space to satellite companies by building and operating high-performance rockets. And we see, I mean, it's such an amazing time to be in aerospace and to be in the space industry, especially because we see such a high growing demand in terms of the number of satellites that need to be put into orbit. When we look at the numbers, so in the past 50 years, there were probably 5,000 to 6,000 satellites put in orbit. But we know that in the next coming years, maybe 5 to 10 years, there's going to be 50,000 satellites put in orbit. So there's a huge demand. And that's because basically satellites are becoming a lot cheaper and a lot smaller. And so it's a lot more easier to create use cases for satellites, and the cost of launching satellites into orbit have decreased. So it's very interesting because there's such a high demand, and it's not only the launch infrastructure, but that created sort of an opportunity for many other companies to build on top of the launch infrastructure, and it creates an ecosystem of aerospace that's kind of new. And it's really a transformation in the industry. So we really see an ecosystem of launch rockets, but also many other startups, many other companies around it, really creating new use case that is going further than just broadband communication or GPS or weather forecast. It really created new use cases, and that's going to be super interesting to look at in the coming years.
And so there's already a lot of startup developing small launchers. You know, we all heard about SpaceX, Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos. What's going to make launchers special? Cheaper, more affordable, more efficient. How do you see things?
Yeah. So at Launcher, we build smaller rockets, but it's the highest performance rocket. So basically, we work on performance, and we see it different because basically we are the only company that offers both small dedicated rockets to launch satellites, but we also have an orbital transfer vehicle. So that means that for customer satellite companies that need to send satellites into orbit, they can also ride share with, so we partner with SpaceX as well, so they can ride share with SpaceX with our orbital transfer vehicle. They will reach orbit to where SpaceX kind of dropped them. It's kind of a bus ride because it's a ride share, and then our orbital transfer vehicle will sort of bring the satellites to the final destination, kind of a last mile solution, and that makes Launcher very competitive in the industry because we offer both small rockets for dedicated launch when ride sharing is not possible, and we also have that orbital transfer vehicle when the customers can't actually ride on bigger rockets, on ride share rockets.
Yeah, so new type of launchers. We are talking, we are seeing a lot of new satellite constellation. Greg Weiler just announced recently that he wants to launch a constellation of 320,000 satellites. That's pretty crazy. And we just heard that NASA is looking for a consortium to take over the International Space Station. What do you think about that?
Well, it really goes back to that ecosystem. So it's not only about exploring, it's also we see companies trying to find use cases to exploit manufacturing in orbit and new use cases part of that ecosystem. So it's public, it's private, and it's really becoming very attractive for companies as well. We see many companies talking about profitability in the coming years, and that's also what's new, because it requires such a high investment to get to orbit, but now with decreasing cost of launch and decreasing cost of components, it's really part of that ecosystem that creates many different opportunities.
Okay, thank you. If we go closer to Earth, Val, can you tell us a bit more what's going on more in the aeronautical or aviation industry? You know, we've seen the rise of cargo drones, eVTOL or flying cars, new type of regional aviation on which you're working. Describe us more what you're doing and how you see the future.
Of course, thank you, Francois. Well, we at ZeroAvia, we work on commercial aviation, repowering commercial aviation, large aircraft, long distances. The company is about 4 years old. We have offices in California, UK, and continental Europe. We are building our first products based on hydrogen electric engine replacements for initially 20-seat aircraft that we're going to launch in about 3 years, and 70, 80-seat aircraft that we're launching in 5 years, 2026, 2027. We already have a number of launch customers, and really we're solving a big sustainability problem that aviation has. Today, aviation is about 2.5–3% of the CO2 budget, but climate impact of aviation is not just about CO2. It's also about the high altitude emissions of particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and high temperature water vapor coming out of those high temperature combustion turbine engines. All of that contributes to at least doubling, and some people think that quadrupling the impact of aviation on climate. So with hydrogen electric technology, we can solve that entire problem. So 100% or 95 to 100% mitigation factor, way more than what you can get from synthetic fuels or hydrogen combustion or for sure hybrids and some other solutions. So we're really excited about that. The technical approach here is store hydrogen on board the aircraft in hydrogen tanks, initially compressed gas, and then over time cryogenic liquid for larger vehicles, run it through the fuel cell systems, produce electricity, and then after that it's an electric powertrain. And we all know that electric powertrain have very low maintenance costs, high reliability, no smell of jet fuel, low noise, a lot of the advantages that we think flying public will appreciate. That's what we're working on at ZeroAvia, and we actually have a pretty good connection to Portugal. One of our 5 board members is the CEO of TAP Portugal. So we're really glad to be here.
And so, can you tell us more about the timeline? When do you think that 20-seater full hydrogen-based will be able to fly? And what does it mean on the way we're going to travel in the near future?
Of course. Well, we have flown already several prototypes, smaller vehicles, 6-seat vehicles. We're going to fly our first 20-seat prototype in the next 2 months. So it's really all happening right now. It's not PowerPoint. It's a real activity, real flight testing. So these flights start in about 2 months, and then we have about a year of flight testing program before we submit for full commercial certification of that engine. And the commercial launch is in 2024, and we just signed our first international route partner with the Schiphol Group in Amsterdam and Rotterdam. First international flight, full passenger flight, is going to be 2024, Rotterdam to London, or London to Rotterdam. Pretty excited about that. And then 5 years out in 2026, that's when we expect to have larger aircraft, 70, 80 seats, and we have a launch partner for that, Alaska Airlines, which is number 5 airline in the United States. Has signed up to be a launch customer for those vehicles, and we're going to be repowering their fleet of regional aircraft to begin with, and then going from there.
And then, do you think hydrogen can apply to all type of aircraft or smaller one, even drones? Do you think that hydrogen is the revolutionary fuel of the 21st century?
Yeah, I think over time we'll see hydrogen and hydrogen electric specifically applicable to all sizes of aircraft. If you basically think about it as a very, very good battery technology, right? So hydrogen is a chemical that has 3 times higher specific energy, or kilowatt hours per kilogram, compared to even jet fuel, and about 100 times better than the best battery of today on the electrical basis, right? So when you take hydrogen, move it through the fuel cell, produce electricity. So number of kilowatt hours that you get out of a kilogram of hydrogen is anywhere between 17 and 20 kilowatt hours. So that's 100 times better than the best battery in aviation today. So that allows us to repower larger and larger type of aircraft over time as the fuel cell technology gets better and better, more lightweight. And we're working on a number of technologies in that department. But similarly, smaller vehicles, absolutely. Some drones have already flown on hydrogen, and as the hydrogen fuel cell technology becomes better, hydrogen storage technologies become better, and we work on this with a lot of our partners, you will see this applicable across all types of vehicles.
Yeah, thanks. And it's fascinating what's happening right now in the aerospace industry. At Starbust, we run an incubator, an accelerator across the globe. You know, we are in 10 different countries. We scout 3,000 new startups every year on that field, and that's pretty incredible. And I love to have you both on stage. Manuel, what can you tell us at the government policy level, whether it's for Portugal or for Europe? What's your view, what's your expectation, and how do you plan to grow that also local ecosystem?
First of all, thank you very much. It's good to have space and aerospace in Web Summit and to be with 2 combustion engineers. We live in times of, I will call, a new space for people. And some 10 years ago, space was essentially dominated by a strong, closed institutional market, and we are moving towards a rather different, say, democratized access to space, but essentially driven not by supply, but above all for demand. Why? Because space prevents disasters. Space is absolutely critical for the ongoing ecological transition, particularly for issues from sustainable land management to fire prevention, to carbon stock detection, to forestry management, but also for maritime surveillance and all other areas, including precision agriculture. Last but not least, because of the emergence of space and the miniaturization of space, we will have more and more space assets, and therefore we need to protect them. We need to protect them to avoid collisions, to avoid potential disasters with impact on Earth, but also, and first and foremost, to guarantee secure communications among people. And therefore, when we mean new space for people, we mean a world with secure communications, with the capacity to prevent disasters, but also a more green solution. So space will be the solution of a greener and more digital society, and this will require more and more people using and be users of space systems and space technologies, from small launchers to small and large satellites, essentially are a user-driven perspective. Earlier today, in the morning, we have launched the second 500K AI Moonshot Challenge, particularly for you to use artificial intelligence on the top of high-resolution image to solve critical problems. In 2019, this was to detect plastic on the oceans. This year, we essentially launched two challenges, one for fire prevention and forest land sustainable management, but also to avoid collisions of satellites. And this is an area of entrepreneurial projects, particularly, and where entrepreneurs will be able to test new ideas, new schemes, but build above all, new firms and new business around this idea that everyone needs to have more and more access to space systems where integrated with our idea to become users of space.
And so are we going to see spaceports in Portugal for now? You know, we know UK is working on one, and Germany is looking at making one, Norway, Sweden. That would make sense to have a spaceport here. If that's
it makes a lot of sense, and the question is, yes, we are working on it, but also don't put it just as a single issue. Certainly, we have the potential to build a spaceport, but we also need people like Val having smaller and smaller rockets. 2 weeks ago, here in Portugal, we organized the second European rocket competition for small rockets, bringing together engineers and entrepreneurs throughout Europe to test very small, clean rockets that will also be able to be launched in probably 10 years' time from ocean platforms. So we need land, but the most interesting assets we Europeans and Portugal have is a large piece of ocean in front of us. Yeah. And to launch and to land, together with the concept of reutilization, will certainly be the future in the coming 10 years. So please enjoy and come here to test new launchers, which can be also launched from ocean platforms, land on the ocean, and we reutilize the launchers. That will certainly be the future, and we are working in a 10 to 20 years framework to have essentially the ocean itself as a platform for safe, clean, and smaller launchers.
Thank you. Kelly, so we talked about space, the different area where it's growing, it's booming. At Launcher, you've raised almost like, what, 50 million. What does it take to create a successful aerospace startups? It's deep tech. Usually investors are kind of reluctant to go into that area. How did you reach that level so far?
Yeah, so we've raised 18 million so far, and our target is to be able to reach orbit with less than 50 million investment, which is really a fraction of the cost of other launcher and other rocket manufacturers. I think Rocket Lab was about 100 million, SpaceX 200 million. So we're really working on capital efficiency and high performance engine. So we are vertically integrated. We manufacture everything in-house. We use 3D printing technologies, and altogether that's allowing us to be very capital efficient and into getting to orbit by 2024 with an investment of around $50 million.
But it used to be hard, or we thought that it was hard to build a rocket engine. How do you do it?
Oh, it's hard. It is hard. So we have, at Launcher we're based in California, and that's really the headquarters of most of the aerospace companies, we have so many great talents, engineers working at launcher, and they're working really, really hard. Actually, with their experience and the hard working, with our culture of really being capital efficient, makes it possible. So, but I think also to get back to the investors, I think investors used to be reluctant, but it's kind of changing. We see a lot more VCs, venture capitalists being interested to invest in aerospace companies because that ecosystem is really growing and becoming real. And because of the reducing cost of launch, many of these companies actually have not profitable, but profitability in 5 to 10 years. And that, I think, in combination with the success of companies, of some of the companies in aerospace, it brings trust to the investors.
Val, you are, making huge progress, making many different announcements this past few days, using the COP 26 to announce even more, contracts. You could be the next aerospace unicorn, crossing fingers. What's interesting in the last 12 months, we went from 2 unicorns maybe to at least 25 unicorns because of the SPAC, mostly in the US. Can you tell us more about how you do it, also in such a short period of time? How can you create value, go from 0 to a unicorn level in like 4 years?
Yeah, I think big part of the answer there is that the problem that we're solving is so huge. And really, I talked about it in the beginning, but just to put some numbers in perspective, it's a $1.5 trillion market, and right now there is no credible solution to the sustainability problem in aviation. And all the other industries, definitely in transportation, but also beyond. You look at the power sector, you look at the buildings, you look at heavy industries. Most of those industries have a way to solve their sustainability problem. Aviation doesn't really. So this is a solution to a $1.5 trillion problem. And by the way, $1.5 trillion is just a pre-pandemic number, 2019. And we're going to see a tremendous growth of aviation. It's one of the fastest growing markets in transportation historically. Typically, traffic grows 5, 6, 7% a year. In cargo, even more, as everybody moves to e-commerce. We need to move those goods in a sustainable way. So it's really, really big problem. Everybody now realizes that this problem needs solution. So that's where you see investors and the markets really value credible solutions and credible companies, and we think that at ZeroAvia we show credibility by actually building hardware, actually putting it in the aircraft, flying the aircraft, learning all the different aspects of operation. We have, as part of this process, we have interacted with regulatory agencies in the United States, in the UK, and it takes quite a bit of safety design and the system design to have regulatory agencies approve even the experimental flight of these vehicles. And we went through all this process. So I think investors in the markets recognize that, and that's where you see this value creation.
Yeah, that's amazing. Manuel, do you want to... What are you doing to attract these type of startups? So ZeroAvia is based in California, Launcher is based in California. California is a great ecosystem. It's about almost the size of Portugal. What is being done here to create that ecosystem, and when is going to be the next aerospace unicorn?
We are building in Europe a system to first accelerate entrepreneurs, and through the European Innovation Council, we have already a mainstream of actions to help accelerating entrepreneurs. In 2 weeks' time, we will meet here in Portugal the European Space Agency ministers in charge in order to develop what we call the ESA 2025 agency agenda, particularly again devoted to what in the Anglo-Saxonic area we call the commercialization of space, essentially for small startups, as I mentioned, in three main areas. First, say, high-resolution Earth observation for disaster prevention. Second, high-resolution image for green change, which again go from precision agriculture to carbon sequestration. Last but not least, the third stream on the protection of active space assets, like particularly space traffic management, which will rely essentially on advanced IT and artificial intelligence type of companies. And these three streams will be alimented by special funds in order to promote entrepreneurs. And this is a collective effort. This is a collective effort. Certainly, the scope of the European Space Agency and most of our national agencies work within the civil domain. And again, the European space landscape is certainly different from that in the US. But for being different, we have also niche markets, particularly for civil protection and above all for civil operations from agriculture to space traffic management. But the opportunity for new ideas is increasingly important throughout the world, certainly in Europe, but also in the United States or in China or in India, because definitely there is a consensus about the new scope for space and what we call new space activities.
We have 2 minutes left. Maybe Kelly, what do you expect in 2022 to happen both for launcher and more globally for the space industry? What are you looking for?
Right, 1 minute. Yeah, so 2022 is going to be a great year for launcher because we're going to reach orbit with our orbital transfer vehicle in partnership with SpaceX. So we will ride on a rideshare rocket from SpaceX and then bring our customer satellites to their final destination. That's going to be a great year. And we will also do another round of funding, so working with investors to reach our goal.
And then Starship from SpaceX is supposed to launch and change a game-changing vehicle for the space industry also.
Yes.
Val, what do you expect for 2022 for yourself and the aviation industry?
Yeah, I think 2022, well, definitely for ZeroAvia, we'll be in the flight testing of our 20-seat prototypes, which is quite exciting because that's our first commercial vehicle size that we're looking to launch. We will also have some initial full thrust ground tests towards the end of the year, next year, of a 2-megawatt engine, which goes into the 70-seat aircraft, which we will be ready to fly in 2023, again, experimental aircraft, but it's pretty exciting. And I think for the whole industry, this will just demonstrate that zero emission, true zero emission propulsion is not 10, 15 years out. It's actually coming very soon. And the flying public and the governments and everybody should get excited about this becoming a very near future in 3 to 5 years.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you, the audience.